He looked 15, but killed 240 enemy soldiers. When Audie Murphy tried to enlist in the military after Pearl Harbor, the Marines rejected him for being too short. The paratroopers turned him away for being too light. The Navy said no thanks. He was 5'5", weighed barely 110 pounds, and had a baby face that made recruiters laugh. But this scrawny teenager from Texas would become the most decorated American combat soldier of World War II, earning every single medal for valor that the United States could award, including the Medal of Honor. His story isn't just about war. It's about a kid who had nothing, lost everything, and still found a way to become a legend. Audie Leon Murphy was born on June 20, 1925, in a dirt-floor sharecropper's shack near Kingston, Texas. He was the seventh of 12 children born to Emmett and Josie Murphy, though only 9 would survive to adulthood. The Murphy family lived in crushing poverty that's hard to imagine today. They picked cotton for pennies, moved constantly from one ramshackle farm to another, and often went to bed hungry. Audie's father was an unreliable man who drifted in and out of their lives, finally abandoning the family altogether when Audie was just a boy. His mother did her best, but she was worn down by poverty, illness, and the relentless struggle to feed her children. From the time he could walk, Audie worked. He picked cotton in fields that stretched endlessly under the brutal Texas sun. He hunted rabbits and squirrels to put meat on the table, becoming an exceptional marksman by necessity. Every bullet had to count when your family was starving. By the time he was in 5th grade, he dropped out of school to work full-time. Education was a luxury the Murphys couldn't afford. His childhood wasn't about playing games or having friends. It was about survival, pure and simple. And then, when Audie was 16, his mother died. Josie Murphy was only 39 years old, destroyed by the hardship of her life. Her death devastated Audie, who had adored her. With his father long gone and the family falling apart, Audie and his older sister Corinne took on the responsibility of keeping their younger siblings together. But it was too much. The younger children were eventually placed in an orphanage, and Audie was left with a burning sense that he had failed his mother's final wish to keep the family together. Then came Pearl Harbor. On December 7, 1941, when the Japanese attacked Hawaii, everything changed for America and for Audie Murphy. He was working odd jobs, barely scraping by, and still carrying the weight of his mother's death and his family's dissolution. The war gave him something he desperately needed, a purpose. He wanted to enlist immediately, but there was a problem. Actually, several problems. He was only 16, though he lied and said he was 18. He was underweight. He was too short. He looked like a strong wind could blow him over. The Marines took one look at him and said no. The paratroopers weren't interested. The Navy passed. Finally, after his sister Corinne helped him falsify his age on the documents, the Army accepted him in June 1942. They probably figured they could use any warm body, even one as small as Audie Murphy's. Basic training at Camp Walters, Texas, should have been the end of Murphy's military aspirations. He was so small that his uniform had to be specially tailored. Other soldiers towered over him, but what he lacked in size, he made up for in determination and an almost scary level of competence with a rifle. The same skills that had kept his family fed in Texas made him a natural soldier. His instructors noticed that this quiet kid from nowhere could outshoot almost everyone. He was calm under pressure, focused, and fearless in a way that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside. After basic training, Murphy was assigned to the 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division, and shipped overseas in 1943. Murphy's first taste of combat came in the invasion of Sicily in July 1943. The 3rd Infantry Division landed on the beaches and fought its way through the rugged Sicilian countryside. For a kid who had never left Texas, it must have been overwhelming. The heat, the chaos, the sound of artillery, the sight of dead bodies. But Murphy didn't freeze. He didn't panic. He fought with a cold efficiency that stunned his fellow soldiers. Within his first few weeks in combat, he killed 2 Italian officers who refused to surrender, earning his first commendation. His company commander noticed him immediately. This baby-faced teenager was a natural killer, and in war, that was the highest compliment. After Sicily came the Italian mainland campaign, one of the most brutal and grinding fights of the European theater. The Germans had turned Italy into a fortress, and every mountain, every river, every town had to be taken at terrible cost. Murphy fought through the mud and blood of Salerno, through the ruins of Naples, through the frozen hell of the Rapido River crossing. Men died all around him, Friends he had made were blown apart by artillery or cut down by machine gun fire. But Murphy kept going. He was promoted to corporal, then sergeant. He earned the Bronze Star, then the Silver Star. His fellow soldiers started calling him Baby because of his youthful face. But there was nothing childish about the way he fought. He was aggressive, fearless, and devastatingly effective. In January 1944, Murphy's best friend, a soldier named Laddie Tipton, was killed by German machine gun fire. Something changed in Murphy that day. The anger that had been building inside him since his mother's death, since his family's disintegration, since every hardship and humiliation of his childhood, found a focus. He went after the German machine gun position alone, killed the crew, and then turned the gun on the retreating Germans. He killed dozens. His company commander put him in for a medal, but Murphy didn't care about medals. He cared about killing Germans. It became personal for him in a way that worried some of his officers. He volunteered for the most dangerous missions. He took risks that should have gotten him killed. But somehow, impossibly, he kept surviving. The 3rd Infantry Division landed in southern France in August 1944 as part of Operation Dragoon. Murphy was now a second lieutenant, promoted from the enlisted ranks for his courage and leadership. The fighting in France was different from Italy. It was faster, more fluid, but no less deadly. Murphy led his platoon through the French countryside, through forests and villages, always pressing forward. He earned a Distinguished Service Cross for single-handedly holding off a German attack, killing 50 enemy soldiers and allowing his unit to withdraw safely. His superiors described him as the best natural combat soldier they had ever seen. But Murphy was starting to show the strain. He had been in combat for over a year with almost no break. He had seen too many men die. He had killed too many enemies. The nightmares were starting, the shakes, the 1,000-yard stare that combat veterans know too well. Then came January 26, 1945, near the French village of Holzweiler in the Alsace region. This was the day that would define Audie Murphy's legend. Murphy's company was down to just 19 men after weeks of intense fighting. They were ordered to hold a position along the edge of a forest against a German counterattack. The Germans came at them with 6 tanks and over 200 infantry. It was overwhelming force against a tiny, exhausted American unit. Murphy ordered his men to fall back to better defensive positions while he stayed forward to direct artillery fire. Then one of the American tank destroyers was hit and burst into flames. The crew bailed out, leaving the burning vehicle's 50 caliber machine gun intact. Murphy climbed onto the burning tank destroyer. The vehicle was taking direct hits and could explode at any moment. But Murphy got behind that machine gun and started firing. For over an hour, he stood there alone, completely exposed, calling in artillery strikes on his field telephone while firing the machine gun at the advancing Germans. He killed dozens of enemy soldiers, broke up their attack formations, and stopped the German advance cold. He was wounded in the leg but refused to leave his position. The Germans tried everything to kill him. They fired rifles, machine guns, mortars, and tank rounds at him. The tank destroyer beneath him was hit multiple times and burning fiercely. But Murphy stayed there, methodically firing, reloading, adjusting artillery, firing again. When he finally ran out of ammunition, the German attack had been completely shattered. Only then did he climb down, organize his men, and lead a counterattack that drove the Germans back. For his actions that day, Murphy received the Medal of Honor. The citation for his Medal of Honor tells the basic facts, but it can't capture what it must have been like. Imagine standing on a burning vehicle that could explode any second. Imagine being shot at by 200 enemy soldiers and multiple tanks. Imagine doing that for over an hour, alone, while wounded. Most people would have run or frozen in terror. Murphy stayed and fought because that's what he did. That's who he was. A warrior who had been shaped by poverty, loss, and rage into something uncommon and terrifying. Murphy finished the war in Germany, fighting all the way to the bitter end in April 1945. By the time it was over, he had served in 9 major campaigns. He had been wounded 3 times. He had earned 33 awards and decorations, including every medal for valor that the United States could give, plus 5 from France and 1 from Belgium. He had killed an estimated 240 enemy soldiers in combat, though the real number was probably higher. He was 20 years old. Coming home should have been a relief, but for Murphy it was the beginning of a different kind of battle. He was a national hero, featured on the cover of Life magazine, praised in newspapers across the country. Hollywood came calling. Murphy signed a contract with MGM and tried to become an actor. But he was haunted by what he had done and what he had seen. He suffered from terrible nightmares, insomnia, and what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder. He kept a loaded pistol under his pillow and slept fitfully, waking at the slightest sound. He struggled with anger and depression. For years, he became addicted to sleeping pills, taking them just to get a few hours of rest without the nightmares. This was long before PTSD was recognized or treated. Veterans were just expected to tough it out, to move on, to forget. But Murphy couldn't forget. His acting career took time to develop. His first roles were small, and he was stiff and uncomfortable on camera. But he worked at it with the same determination he had shown in combat. He took acting lessons, studied the craft, and gradually improved. In 1955, he starred in To Hell and Back, a film based on his own autobiography. He played himself, reenacting his own combat experiences. The film was a huge hit and became Universal Studios' highest-grossing picture for 20 years. Murphy went on to make over 40 films, mostly westerns, becoming a genuine movie star. He was never a great actor, but audiences loved him. There was something authentic about him, something real that came through on screen. But fame and success couldn't heal Murphy's wounds. He spoke publicly about his PTSD symptoms, which was incredibly rare and brave for that era. He testified before Congress about the need for better mental health care for veterans. He talked about his nightmares, his anger, his struggles with addiction to sleeping pills. He lost friends who thought he was being weak or embarrassing. But Murphy didn't care. He had faced down German tanks. He could face down criticism. He wanted other veterans to know they weren't alone, that these invisible wounds were real and deserved treatment. Murphy's personal life was complicated. He married twice, had 2 children, and by most accounts was a devoted father. But his demons never fully left him. He had financial problems despite his Hollywood success, losing money in bad business deals and helping out too many people who asked for loans. He was generous to a fault, unable to say no to veterans who needed help or old friends from Texas who were down on their luck. The boy who had grown up with nothing couldn't stand to see others suffer. On May 28, 1971, Audie Murphy died in a plane crash. He was flying in a private plane from Atlanta to Martinsville, Virginia, for a business meeting when the aircraft encountered bad weather and crashed into Brush Mountain near Roanoke. He was 45 years old. The news shocked the nation. This man who had survived so much combat, who had seemed indestructible, was gone in a senseless accident. His funeral at Arlington National Cemetery drew enormous crowds. He was buried with full military honors, and his grave became one of the most visited sites in the cemetery, second only to President Kennedy's. Audie Murphy's story resonates because it's fundamentally American. He was born with nothing in a forgotten corner of Texas. He had every reason to fail, to disappear into poverty and obscurity. Instead, he became a symbol of courage and sacrifice. But his story is also a reminder of the cost of war. The medals and the glory came with nightmares and psychological scars that never fully healed. Murphy was honest about that cost in a way that was rare for his time. He didn't pretend that war had made him a better person or that combat was glorious. He talked about what it really did to soldiers, to their minds and souls. There's something almost mythical about Murphy's life. The poor orphan who becomes a warrior king. The smallest man who becomes the greatest fighter. The boy who looked 15 but had the heart of a lion. These are the stories humans have told since the beginning of time. But Murphy's story was real. He really did all those incredible things. He really did stand on that burning tank destroyer and hold off an entire German counterattack. He really did earn every medal his country could give him. And he really did struggle for the rest of his life with the psychological wounds that those experiences left behind. When we remember Audie Murphy today, we should remember the whole story. The poverty and loss that shaped him. The incredible courage he displayed in combat. The honesty with which he discussed his struggles with PTSD. The advocacy he did for other veterans. He was a complicated man, neither purely a hero nor purely a victim, but something more human and real than either of those labels. He was a product of his time and circumstances, shaped by the Great Depression and World War II into something uncommon. He showed what was possible when courage and determination were pushed to their absolute limits, but he also showed the price of that kind of intensity, the way that combat leaves marks on a person's soul that never entirely fade. The most decorated American soldier of World War II was a kid who should never have made it. He was too poor, too small, too young. But Audie Murphy didn't know how to quit. He had spent his entire childhood fighting to survive, and when the war came, he simply transferred those skills to a different kind of fighting. He became exactly what his country needed at that moment in history. A warrior who could face down any enemy, who would never retreat, who would do whatever it took to win. And after the war, when his country needed people to speak honestly about the cost of combat, he became that too, using his fame to advocate for veterans and break the silence around mental health issues. His grave at Arlington is marked by a simple white headstone, no different from the thousands of others except for the steady stream of visitors who come to pay their respects. They leave coins and flags and flowers, honoring a man who gave everything for his country and his fellow soldiers. The baby-faced kid from Texas who looked 15 but killed 240 enemy soldiers. The orphan who became a legend. The warrior who never stopped fighting, even when the battles were in his own mind. That's who Audie Murphy was, and that's why we still remember him today, more than 50 years after his death. Because his story, in all its tragedy and triumph, is the story of America itself.